We're going to be making caramelized onions today. First off, I'm going to show you how to cut an onion. This is an onion. This is obviously the stem part, and this is obviously the root. Now you're going to cut the stem off first. That way if there's loose bits, you'll notice them right away, and then cut the end off. Cut your onion in half. And we're cutting it this way for a very specific reason. Go ahead and peel both halves of your onion. And the reason we're cutting it this way is it's going to give us more surface area for cooking. When you are cooking onions, your surface area is very important. It's also very important to get all the skin out of your cooking area, your cutting area. Now you're going to cut it into what I like to call the rainbow shape. It sounds really silly, but it helps you remember it. The reason we're doing this is this maximizes the amount of cooking space. Some people like to cut their onions like this. The difficulty with this is there's very little cooking space. There's no exposure of cut ends, which the cut ends allow the juices of the onion to come out and caramelize. So for stir fries, this is great, but caramelization, not so much. So you're going to go ahead and you're going to cut your onion up into slices. Try and keep them the same size, if possible. You're caramelizing, so it's not that big of a deal. So you take your onion, you lay it flat, you squeeze both ends of your onion, make your first cut. Then take your index finger, work it over the cut slice you just cut, and follow the knife down, being very careful not to cut your finger. We're going to go ahead and cut up the rest of these onions. I've got a bunch of them. The reason being, when you caramelize onions, you're going to be using a lot more than you think you are. It's not... You're going to be using probably 1 onion per person, which sounds like a lot, but you're caramelizing, so there's going to be a lot of reduction. As you can see, I always start with the top first. You see all the loose skin there? It wouldn't have come off if I cut the root end off first. One of the big things with cutting your onion like this, you've got to treat it like grass or like green onion. You wouldn't cut a green onion the long way. You'd cut it cross grain like we're doing with these onions here, because otherwise it would be hard to eat. Now, one thing that some people like to do is they like to cut their onions into rounds. The rounds are a great thing for looks, but I don't prefer them. One, they're kind of annoying if you aren't really good at it, and it takes a lot of onions to become really good at it. So here's a round slice of onions. The thing that I hate about them is the membrane between covering each slice of onion. You can kind of see it here. When you bite into it, even if it's been cooked, it makes it kind of slimy and kind of pulls the whole thing towards you as you're eating. And especially with raw, it's even worse. That's the other reason to, instead of doing halves, do, or wholes, rounds, find the right word there, we're going to cut them in half, because that breaks that onion paper. Little bit of badness on the onion. And that's one great thing about caramelization. If your onions aren't that pretty, you now have a thing to do with them if you aren't comfortable with serving them raw. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 some odd onions here. Maybe 6, maybe more, maybe less, I don't know. I'm not counting, even though I was the one who cut them up. Very clever of me. Now I have a 9-inch cast iron skillet. that I'm going to cook these in. I like the cast iron because you're cooking low and slow. It's nice and heavy, which is something that you really want for low and slow. Now, the adjustment is always fun. What you want to do now is you take your cast iron skillet. Now, ideally, you'd start out with the cast iron skillet on the stove, you'd heat it up, you'd add your oil, let the oil heat, and then add your onions. This is for point of demonstration. So you're going to add probably 3 tablespoons of oil. Yeah, about 3 tablespoons of oil for a 9-inch pan, and this many onions. And you're going to break up your little rainbows. And you don't have to break them into specific individual pieces like that. You mostly want to break each rainbow apart from each other rainbow. And you put them in your pan and get all the little bits and pieces in there. Then you're going to season it with a little bit of coarse kosher salt, probably about not quite a half a teaspoon. You don't have to salt it, it tastes better. And what I just added here was literally a sprinkle of white granulated sugar. And you add that because that speeds up the caramelization process. It gets all the sugars started out. I have earlier tonight gone ahead and caramelized 2 onions. This is just 2 onions. That's all I got from 2 onions. And 2 medium-sized onions cooked down that small. And my close-up shots are really, really hideous. But trust me, it's really golden brown, very dark, and very not oily looking, but, well, there was a slightly better shot, and then the lighting all Please forgive us, we're still working on the lighting. So I'm going to go ahead and add my onions that I've already cooked. There's a good color shot, comparative. Okay, so now you've got your onions in your pan with the oil and the sugar and the salt. You're going to put them on just over medium, now about medium-high heat to start. And be warned, this process is going to take a long-ass time. You want to let them sit at medium-high until the bottom onions just start to get a medium brown color to them. Doesn't have to be the entire piece of onion, just some color. Give it a good stir. Let the next layer of raw onion get a little bit of color. Give it another good stir and then turn it down to just under medium. Once your onions start softening up, it's going to take about about 20 minutes, half an hour before your onions really start to lose shape. While you're waiting for that to happen, keep an eye on them. You don't want them to burn, but you do want them to start picking up color. If there starts to be a lot of fluid in the bottom of your pan, a lot of liquid, turn your skillet up to high, let it boil off, push your onions to one side of the pan, let the water, the juice boil off, and then drop your temperature back down low once your pan's pretty much dry. If need be, add some more oil. In order to get really good, dark, caramelized onions, you're going to be cooking them between 2 to 3 hours to cook them really low and really slow. You can do it in the oven, but you run a larger chance of them burning on the edges and not cooking in the middle, which is why I like the put it in a pan, stir every few minutes method. You're probably going to drop the temperature down after the first 20 minutes, half an hour, to just above low, Like, not so low that it's not doing anything, but not so high that it's going to burn. It's going to be dependent on your stove. And then just let them cook down really, really slowly. And it's gonna take longer than you think it is. And you're going to start to wonder if they're burning. Great way to check for this: are the dark bits hard? That's how you know you burned them. Otherwise, if they're dark and soft, it's just really, really caramelized. And that's pretty much it. Have fun.